Sejam todos bem-vindos a mais um DriftCast, o podcast oficial da Super Drift Brasil. Hoje, Fernando Castro comigo.
Boa, rapaziada, tudo bem?
Me acompanhando aí para essa entrevista que pra gente é uma honra. Uma pessoa que agregou demais, uma pessoa que agrega até hoje. A gente tem um carinho muito especial por ele. Eu posso dizer que falando de um português assim bem simples, o gringo mais gente boa que eu já conheci até hoje na minha vida.
É verdade.
Um cara com um coração espetacular. Ryan, que é nosso juiz aí, já podemos se dizer de, como diz o Fernando, ele já é um juiz, como é que é, Fernando? Residente da Super Drift Brasil. Um cara que faz parte de...
Ele fala, né? Ele fala que é juiz da Super Drift Brasil, não que ele trabalha com a gente.
Sim, sim. Ele já é considerado da família STB, né? E o Ryan, tem N coisas que a gente vai perguntar, vai abordar com ele agora, que querendo ou não é uma pessoa que agrega demais ao esporte ao nível mundial.
No mundo todo, né?
Acho que ele agregou muito a todas as categorias por onde ele passou e por onde ele está até hoje. E eu tenho certeza que vai ser algo bem bacana para vocês. Não vou dizer prestigiar, mas poder entender esse lado dele, o porquê pelo esporte, sabe? É o esporte pelo esporte. Ele é um cara muito assim, focado e determinado em tudo aquilo que ele fala e aquilo que ele faz. E bom, mais ou menos isso daí. Ryan, seja bem-vindo. Estou muito feliz em ter você aqui conosco.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Hoje a gente vai falar um pouquinho sobre a sua história, sobre tudo que você fez pelo esporte, tá? E eu acredito que vai ser algo muito bacana para todos os nossos, tanto ouvintes quanto as pessoas que nos assistem pelo YouTube, porque você é meio que um ser mitológico aqui. Poucas pessoas sabem, assim, exatamente tudo que você já fez pelo esporte, então a gente quer puxar um pouquinho isso. Eu sou uma pessoa muito grata por tudo que você fez por nós, toda a sua dedicação, sabe? Você contribuiu demais com todo o crescimento do esporte a nível Brasil. Poucas pessoas sabem, mas eu e o Ryan, nós conversamos muitas e muitas vezes. Tanto no fator crescimento, quanto no fator de aprendizado.
Desenvolvimento também, né? A gente fez bastante.
Foi algo assim muito... somou demais, sabe? Então eu fico lisonjeado em poder falar que hoje nós temos eles na família Super Drift Brasil.
For sure. I'm very happy to be here, guys. I love coming down there all the time, and unfortunately we can't do that yet, but once I can, until I can, this is the best we can do, right? So, happy to be here.
Sim. E já tá sendo muito bom, porque a gente continuou, né? Ryan, eu queria começar sobre a sua história, tá? Eu sei que nós já comentamos sobre isso, mas eu acho que seria algo bem interessante para o nosso público. Saber um pouquinho sobre como tudo começou na sua vida voltado ao drift, tá? E toda a sua trajetória.
So back in the year 2004, I think it was, a friend of mine that I used to work with, he had a car magazine, and he decided one day to do a feature on these two guys that had 240SX cars that they would slide around, and they built them in a Japanese fashion, from videos they'd seen on YouTube and magazines and things like that. So we went to this photo shoot, and it was at a racetrack, and the guys started sliding their cars around a little bit, and I thought, I've seen this on the internet, but I don't know anything about it really. And it was the coolest thing I'd seen. I went for a ride in one of the cars, and I loved it. And I had been sliding my car around in the winter in the snow, and now this was on pavement. So it was like a huge revelation to me. It was amazing. So my friend decided he wanted to start a drift competition in Canada, and this was in 2004. So that fall, he did one event, and a lot of people showed up to see it, and it was really cool. I ended up driving a car in that event. It was an RX-7, an old FC3S, and it had a 350 with an automatic transmission. It was awful. But that's where my passion started, and that's where the drifting scene in Canada started. So After that, the next season, we did four events in Quebec, in Canada, and I helped organize the events. And then that went on through 05, 06. I received a car from Japan in 2006, a Skyline GTST R32, and I started learning how to drift myself. In 2007, during one of the events, Yokohama needed somebody to do a ride-along for contest winners. And they said, Ryan, you have a car, you can do it. So I did it. And while doing those demos at each event for Yokohama, the BF Goodrich people were there and they wanted to start a team in 2008. They saw me driving. They said, he's good. We want him on our team. So in 2008, I was competing for BF Goodrich in a Pontiac GTO, did that for 2 years. At the end of 2009, unfortunately, I lost my sponsor and I didn't have money anymore because I had spent so much money to get to that point. I was in debt and everything, the racing debt problem that a lot of people have. So I started judging in 2010 in Canada. And we had a judge from the US that would come up and help us from Formula Drift. And when he was coming up all through the season in 2010, he taught me so much. Tony Angelo was his name. And he was a competitor in Formula Drift, and then he became a judge. He brought me down for an interview and said, we think you'd be great as a judge in 2011. And I went for an interview at the end of 2010. They said, you've got the job. So in 2011, I became a judge for Formula Drift. That's where my journey started in the big world of drifting internationally. And through working in the US for Formula Drift, I made so many contacts that I started traveling all around the world doing drifting events as a judge in Super Drift Brazil and in Japan and in Russia and in all these other countries. So that's really where my journey started and got me to where I am today.
Ryan, qual foram os caminhos que você percorreu e qual foram as suas estratégias para você se tornar o melhor juiz de drift que nós temos hoje na atualidade, ou pelo menos o que todos, né, nós julgamos é que realmente você é o melhor juiz que tem hoje a nível global?
It's not something I gave much thought to along the way. It was just going with the flow, more or less. I was in Formula Drift in 2011. I didn't have a vision of where I would end up. I didn't have a vision of becoming an international judge or becoming what would be referred to as a high-ranking judge, let's say. It was an experience that I enjoyed a lot at the time, just getting to go to these events. If you remember, I don't know if you know, but I used to drive down to different drift events for Formula Drift, or I'd fly down. Like I went to Road Atlanta in 2009, I think it was. I went to Seattle in 2007 or 8, something like that. So I would, on my own dime, I would pay to go attend these events because it's something that interested me. I wanted to see how they operated. So to be involved in that was exciting, but I didn't have like a plan, if you will. I was just going with the flow. Whatever came up, whatever opportunities I would get, I would take them. I would never turn down an opportunity. So it gave me, I think, a little bit more accessibility, because some of the other judges that were involved in the sport were busy. They had other jobs. They maybe didn't have the interest in traveling and seeing all the different things that are out there in the world. So I guess I had the benefit of having a job at the time. I was doing the automotive driving events where I had free time in between contracts, and I ended up working my schedule out so that I had the time to go to drift events. And that gave me, I think, a bit of an advantage over other people that were doing judging at the time. And when it comes to drift judging, I think a lot of what makes somebody good at it is doing a lot of events, not only in your one part of the world, let's say, getting to travel and see drifting from a different perspective, maybe in a different country. So you're seeing different cars on different tracks with different personalities and different approaches to the sport. I think that gives somebody a real breadth, a wide experience level that allows them to see every situation that pops up and understand how that plays out. It's just, I think, repetition. Really, it's doing something so many different times in different environments that gives you that advantage. So if you're a judge and you're judging in one series and in one country, you can become really good, but you can't. I think you need to have that step out of that bubble, to really see different experiences all around the world. And I think that's my one true advantage, is that I've been to so many different countries and watched drifting in all these different countries, giving me that big step up. I think that's truly my advantage.
Nice. It's almost like the time in drifting made you instead of you having to do something, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like I've been molded by all those
instead of seat time, it's pen time.
Yeah.
Something like that. Awesome.
Yep.
Ryan, quais foram as suas maiores dificuldades, ou se tem alguma até hoje, na profissão de juiz de drift?
Judging drifting at the Formula Drift level is becoming extremely difficult. It's something that has only really become an issue in the last 2 to 3 years, I would say. The drivers now today are driving rocket ships. These cars they're like 9-second drag racing cars, but they go sideways. So the amount of power, grip, ability that they have compared to, let's say, even 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's this exponential growth that has made judging really, really difficult. And I'll explain why. The series used to be, so when I started in 2011, up until about 2016 maybe, when we were looking at a top 16 or a top 32 battle ladder, you could look at each battle pairing and say, I can't say for sure because you never know what's going to happen, but if everything goes as it normally goes, I think driver B is going to win because, well, that driver is just that good and the other driver maybe isn't that good.
I see what you mean.
And you could do that in probably the first round, second round of competition, and then by the third round, it would get a little bit more complicated because some of the better drivers would start to meet up with one another. But that all changed, I'd say like 2015, 2016, things started to get a lot more complex. And in the last few years, it's become impossible to know who's going to win ahead of time. You can't make any guesses anymore because everybody is so good now. So that's the first level of difficulty. The second level of difficulty is the cars are moving so fast and the chase drivers are so close to the lead drivers now that there's zero room for error. Let's say 5, 6 years ago, the cars weren't as close through an entire run as they are today. So back then, there was room for the lead driver to make errors. The lead driver could, maybe grab a handbrake where they're not supposed to, or go a little bit offline and then get back online. But the chase car was so far away that it didn't really matter as much. That error, that mistake, wouldn't come into play as much. But today, the cars are inches apart for the entirety of the run. So if the lead driver makes a small correction somewhere, it's going to have a big impact on the chase car. And then it comes down to trying to find fault for the contact or the collision that occurred after that correction was made. And the decel map has tried, we've tried to fix things with the decel map. We've tried to make that decel map work for us. But now the decel map needs to be so finite. It needs to be so tight. And if anybody does a movement just outside of that decel map area, then it becomes an issue. And even people making decelerations inside the decel map zone is still a problem. So without data from the cars, such as speed, or maybe like an in-car camera. So if you've got people's hands on the steering wheel if you watch them turn the wheel real hard, you'll know, oh, that driver did that input. Or if you see a handbrake pull, then you could say, oh, that driver made that input. But at the moment, we don't have that type of information. So it's very difficult for us to know what the intention of a driver was behind the wheel of the car. We're not in the car and we can't see what they're doing. All we see is the effect on the outside. And sometimes even the effect is hard to catch because these cars are moving so fast. So today, it's very, very difficult to make a sure and certain call when something happens on the track, like a collision, maybe a decel that caused the chase driver to make an error. So whose fault is that? Tire drops off the track. Sometimes the camera angles aren't perfect. But these are all things that are so vital today to deciding who wins a battle that it makes the job of a judge very difficult. And then, of course, you have the repercussions of a call. We all know that when a call is made, one person's going to be happy and the other person isn't. So no matter which way
always,
the call goes,
yeah, always, yeah.
Yeah, so it's trying to make sure that your call is correct so that you have all of the backing information to say that I made the call because of this and I believe the call is right because of this. But if you don't have that information, it's really hard to back up your call. And then you've got a situation where drivers are making protests. And then you have to prove your side in front of them. And it becomes really difficult when, like I said, the cars are so close, going so fast, and driving at such a high level of competency that those little errors are hard to catch. And they're also hard to enforce as well. So those are the challenges that we face today. And I think the only way that it's going to be alleviated really is with more information from the cars, whether that be speed or an in-car camera or a kind of decel computation that would have to be made by a computer. You'd have to program it to say, yes, there was a decel there that's bigger than what you generally allow. So a lot of those things become a challenge because it's a financial issue. The in-car cameras are easy to set up. It's getting them to transmit live to us that's very expensive. We see this in Formula One and WRC. We see it in NASCAR, but they're playing with very big budgets. Hundreds of thousands of dollars per event are needed just to get that camera view to us live and to the fans live. So a lot of issues, a lot of roadblocks, if you will, to getting that information to us.
Yeah, and as you know, I'm always watching FD live on YouTube and making my personal calls on, and we sometimes we talk to each other to see what's going on. I remember we trying to figure out, like 2, maybe 3 years ago, we talked about the in-car cameras and about the budget. I remember we talking about that, and I agree 100% with you. It's like sometimes people don't even know because they don't have that eye, that clinical eye for judging. I mean, because we were training for that, right? So the calls are getting so close that I think today, I mean, in 2021, I don't think a lot of calls that I've seen going on in FD would be impossible without the drone or without the instant replay, with the side-by-side car videos. It would be impossible. So yeah, it's something it's getting by the inches, right? Like
it is.
And I have a second question on that. You feel that FD is doing in FD the drivers are getting that in that level, and maybe in other countries like in Brazil or maybe Russia, it's like you said, it was back in the day in FD when cars were kind of far apart and you can see better, not better, but see easier what the mistakes and what the goals are.
Yeah, if you look at series like the Russian Drift series, or if you look at Drift Masters, let's say, they have allocated a lot more money, and I believe it's because of the sponsors that they've managed to acquire, especially Drift Masters, because Drift Masters has Red Bull right now. The Red Bull Media House is taking a huge step in Europe to provide a lot of the technology that's needed for, I think, the ideal judging environment.
Super precise
They have-
judging. Yeah.
Yeah, they have this system where the judges have control over the replays. So they have their own, I don't even know what it's called. It's like this unit that has all of the controls for fast forward, rewind, pause. So they can go through a video very slowly, forward or backwards, and they can analyze the video themselves up in the booth really quickly and easily. So that's the first thing that really helps. The second thing is they have the budget given by Red Bull to bring in all of the Red Bull Media House trucks, cameras, and crew. And that gives them the ability to live stream in-car cameras to the judges and to the fans live.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's huge. That's a big step. But it takes a huge sponsor like that with the technical know-how and all of the technology to make that viable. And unfortunately, in Formula Drift, we just haven't acquired that media partner that can do that, or a sponsor that can pay for somebody like that to come over and do that. And it comes down to the sponsorship. I think if you find a company, you have to find a company that's willing, and you have to find a company that has the budget to do that. And I just don't think in the US that it has gotten to the point where a sponsor would want to provide that yet. In Europe, drifting is, I think, more commonplace, let's say, like amongst motorsports fans. And let's face it, in Europe, they do have a different style of motorsport.
I agree.
What would you call it? Like
more
fan base, let's say. And their interest level on the side of Red Bull is such that they think it's a viable thing to sponsor. And I'm not sure what it would take in the US to acquire that, but even in the Russian Drift Series, they have a great replay system as well. They've also implemented drones, and they've done it to great success. Now in Formula Drift, our drones are phenomenal. We have great drone views as well, but it still can't give that complexity, like the little intricacies that you see from, if we had a camera just over the driver's shoulder showing everything that they're doing, I think that's what would be ideal. But it's hopefully something that will come in the future. But of course, that would probably come with its challenges as well.
Of course,
I'm sitting here saying this is
more tech. More tech.
Ideal,
yeah, more tech is all, sometimes more problems.
More scrutiny, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think first we have you guys would have to get rid of NASCAR, and then maybe that will work.
Essa é a maior dificuldade deles, né? O julgamento, né?
Sim.
Os pilotos, querendo ou não, estão ficando muito parelhos mesmo.
Muito.
É no pelo, né?
É no pelo, tem que criar regra nova, e isso acaba acompanhando com ele, né? Junto.
Bom, falamos aí sobre N dificuldades, que realmente hoje eu acredito que seja muito difícil para vocês aí na Fórmula Drift, mesmo porque os pilotos estão muito próximos um do outro, os carros estão muito preparados, muito fortes também,
1.200 cavalos,
muito bem montados, então são carros também bem parelhos. Agora, e os benefícios? Quais seriam os benefícios hoje do Ryan sendo juiz, ou tá julgando isso tudo, ou que o esporte trouxe de benefício para ele?
Well, being here with you guys is one of the big ones.
Oh,
I
thank
wouldn't
you.
have the friendship I have with you guys if it wasn't for drifting.
Thank you.
And that goes for not only you, but the friends I've made all around the world doing this. And you touched on it as well, traveling. The travel I've been very fortunate to do all around the world, the different countries I've seen, the different cultures and people I've met all over the world, and getting to watch all of this drifting firsthand with the best viewpoint possible has been a real blessing. I've been very fortunate to be able to do all of that in all these countries. When would I ever have had the chance to go to Russia, for instance? Probably never, if it wasn't for drifting, the implementation of the visa that's required to go to Russia and all that, the travel difficulties. When it's handled by a Russian company, it makes it very, very easy. So I think really the travel, the friendships I've made all around the world that last to this day. We haven't been able to travel in the last 2 years pretty much, internationally. And yet I still have maintained the friendships with you guys and with the people in Japan and different countries. So that is something that's going to last my lifetime, and I'm very fortunate to have that opportunity. And again, watching all the drifting that I have, I love drifting. So to get to watch it, and not only do I get to watch it, on a live stream, I get to be there in person, see the sights myself, smell that burnt rubber, and make all the friends that I have. So that's something that I'll never be able to replace in my life.
Nice. Yeah, I always think about that too. Like, there's no better point of view than ours, right? It is the best point of view. I mean, we look for the best point of view to put the judges in. So it is awesome. Yeah. I really like that too.
The only thing that get better is if you were behind the wheel yourself,
Yeah. But we can see all of the drivers now, so.
Yes.
Tirando a parte da dificuldade, né, que é essa parte sua do julgamento, que tem que ser algo muito preciso, algo que sempre tem alguém que se beneficia e sempre alguém que naquele momento acaba, né, tendo a sua volta anulada e sendo eliminado naquele exato momento. Tem todo aquele outro lado pessoal, né? O lado seu de estar sempre viajando, essas coisas, e pouco ficar em casa. O que isso era para você?
Well, it wasn't an issue before because I was single and it didn't really matter that I was traveling so much. Things have changed though, now that since COVID started, I was home a lot more. Clearly, I couldn't travel anywhere at all. And in the last 2 years, I've met somebody and actually gotten married. So the international travel would become a problem now. And that is where a different philosophy of life really, I think, is gonna kind of come into my world. The travel will still happen, but now the travel is going to be with my wife, Brittany, instead of by myself. So I think the being away from home won't be as much of an issue if she's coming with me when I'm going on trips. So
you're taking home with you.
Yeah, it is. It is going to be a different feeling to the travel now. It's going to be with somebody that I love and that I want to spend my time with, as opposed to me by myself bouncing through airports and staying in hotels by myself. So I think things are changing in that respect. I don't know if travel is ever going to get back to the way it was before. I'm still at the moment judging. I've judged Super Drift Brazil remotely. I've judged Japan remotely. I've judged the Russian series remotely as well. So the ability to still be involved in the sport and not have to travel as much is definitely an advantage in the sense that I can actually stay home now and be in my own home and still be involved in the sport, as opposed to spending hours and hours and hours in airplanes and airports and taxis, things like that. So it's a whole different world now. We know that. I don't have to say that. Everybody knows that. But for me personally, things have changed as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of airport time that I used to have, and a lot of, I mean, I think it would be, airport time is like, airplane time is not good, but airport time is awful, right? Like waiting for connecting flight and stuff. But
Yep.
Like you said, you can judge from your house now and with your family, and that is awesome. It's something like almost positive that the pandemic brought to you, right? Yep. Before the pandemic happened, did you judge any time remotely before, or this was something that came new with the pandemic?
No, the pandemic is what really caused the remote judging. I'd never done anything like that before then, and I don't think anybody would have trusted it before the pandemic. And it's not that it isn't trustworthy, it's that nobody wanted to take the chance to be the first to implement remote judging. They felt that the judge had to be there on the ground, had to be there in person. And we've proven now that that's not the case. With the technology we have in terms of live streaming, the technology we have with peer-to-peer messaging and video chat like we're doing right now, and on the ground, the technology that we have in terms of camera angles, multiple cameras, and drones as well, makes it so that the judge is getting all the same views that they would live, and you can still do the same amount of replays. You can still do everything because of this immediate connection that we have via the video chat like this. So really, it's nice to be on the ground and meet everybody and have a part in setting up the track and just having that one-on-one communication with people. But in the world that we're in today, where people still don't really want to be communicating necessarily one-on-one, face-to-face all the time, this isn't such a big problem, and the technology is there to back it up. So it isn't an issue anymore. It's really a benefit to everybody, because it not only saves me from spending countless hours in an airport and in an airplane, but it also saves the series a huge cost, in that they don't have to buy all the flights and hotel rooms and everything else that goes along with somebody being there in person. So I think it's beneficial all around. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get back to going to events live eventually, but until then, it allows series to kind of operate on a lower budget, while they're still getting the same level of service from the judge and the same level of expertise and everything that I can provide.
Yeah, some small upsides to all this that's happening in the world, right, with the pandemic and stuff. Yeah, we are waiting for you to set up the track with us again. Even though we're almost setting the same track, but we're really looking forward to having you back here in Brazil to do everything we do.
Hey, did you guys know that today the U.S. government is allowing travelers back into the U.S. from all the countries that were banned before? So that means Brazil is back on the list. I'm allowed to travel back to the U.S. from Brazil. So as of today, travel is possible.
Oh, really? That's so nice. No quarantine in the round trip? You don't have to quarantine or anything?
Nope.
Just,
no quarantine. You
can go to the airport now and come here if you want. Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Que legal!
Come for the holidays.
Conta pra gente um pouquinho de como foi o seu encontro assim com a Super Drift Brasil. O que você naquele momento sentiu? Como é que foi isso pra você? Tipo, ter mais um campeonato pra jogar e de repente o que você sentiu naquele primeiro evento?
Well, little did I know that I don't remember what year that was now. Was that 20?
That was December 17.
2017, yeah.
So Diego Siga came to compete in FD one year. And little did I know, Mr. Neto came to help him in his endeavor in Formula Drift. And he was attending the driver briefings and kind of being around the sport in general. And that's when he knew about me. And at one point, I was at the FIA drift event in Tokyo, and Neto and Karen were there with one of the drivers that was competing at the time. And that was another situation where we got to work together, but not really knowing that we were working together. It was like they were kind of behind the scenes a little bit, and I didn't know much about them at the time. So that's when they got to know me and see what I was doing. Then I got the invite to go to Rio, and I was excited because I'd never been to South America to Brazil before, and to see a new series and meet new drivers and just see everything that's going on in a new country was very exciting. So that's how everything happened for me. And of course, thrilling for me to get to meet everybody and to know actually who Neto and Karen were, and to understand their involvement in the sport in the country, and also to become friends with them and to know them as people was, I guess, an adventure, but one that I didn't know I was in at the time. Looking back on it, it was pretty monumental though, and a really big step in my life in general, just meeting them and becoming friends with them, and also getting to help develop Super Drift Brazil. It was, I guess, an honor to be given that responsibility. And I think that it's a partnership that's worked out really well for everybody.
Yes, it is. I agree 100%. 100%.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you. Obrigado. Pô, você pode falar pelo menos um thank you aí. Né?
Obrigado. Pelo menos um thank you, né? Com o Ryan é só no Google Tradutor, malandro. É foda, malandro. Eu escrevo uns textos desse tamanho, aí ele manda assim uma carinha assim, tipo, tô tentando entender. Bom, gente, para quem não sabe, o Ryan, ele é um parceiro da Super Drift Brasil desde 2017, como ele mesmo falou agora há pouco tempo. Ele ajudou demais a todos nós a seguirmos uma evolução, principalmente na parte dos pilotos, que muitas das vezes era fazer uma pista um pouco mais agressiva para eles irem evoluindo.
Mais desafiadora, né? Pra fazer com que os pilotos atingissem aqueles pontos um pouquinho mais difíceis.
Bem mais desafiadora, mas sempre visando muito o lado da segurança, porque a gente sabe de toda a dificuldade a nível Brasil. Eu acredito que a SDB não seria, de repente, tudo isso sem a ajuda dele. Ele foi uma pessoa chave para a gente, foi uma pessoa que realmente veio agregar demais
para somar
para
total,
todos nós, né? Somou muito, tanto a Super Drift Brasil quanto o esporte no todo. E a minha pergunta para o Ryan é como ele vê tudo isso, como ele vê desde do ato que ele veio para cá pela primeira vez até hoje, mesmo com as dificuldades da pandemia. Se realmente ele está satisfeito com tudo que nós conseguimos evoluir com os pilotos, o que de repente ele acha que precisa melhorar?
Well, in all honesty, I didn't expect the level of advancement that I saw from the drivers, the teams, the driving, everything. I've been to other countries that didn't really progress very much after trying to implement all of these different rule sets and requirements from the drivers, and everything that we sort of put on the drivers in SDB has been done before in other countries, and it hasn't been accepted. It hasn't been incorporated into the series as much as it has in SDB. So I will be honest and say that my expectations were not high for the development of the series. You know, I knew that the judging parameters, the rules, the regulations, and all of that were tested in other series, such as Formula Drift. We really just brought in the rules and regulations as they were in Formula Drift and adapted them lightly to SDB. So we knew the rules and regulations worked. We knew that they made for fair and even competition and made for an exciting competition. But it doesn't mean that the people involved in the sport are going to adapt to what is going on. It doesn't mean that they're going to accept those new rules and regulations, that they're not going to fight back and try to go back to a simpler way. But what I saw in Brazil with SDB is that the drivers welcomed it with open arms. They wanted the new regulations. They wanted the new, I guess, more fan-friendly setup, you know, and the fact that they took that and ran with it made the series grow, made the drivers better. You could see drivers that when I first got there were definitely capable, but their knowledge level and their ability wasn't at the level that it needed to be. But because of the way everything worked in the judging side of things, the drivers looked at that and said, I have to adapt to that if I want to be more successful within this series. And it's inspiring to see the level to which the majority, almost all drivers, really went headfirst into making themselves better looking team equipment, better looking car liveries, better looking presentation, not only live, but also on the live stream. And it's truly inspiring to see a series and a group of people adapt to the way that they needed to operate to make the series successful and to make themselves look so professional on camera, because I think the perception of the international drift community is so important. in the legitimacy of a series. And the fact that SDB did everything it needed to do and the drivers did everything they needed to do to get to that level of legitimacy, I think is a great testament to the people there, how adaptable they are and how willing they are to be successful. So, kudos to everybody there. Congratulations, because it's been a huge transformation from my point of view anyway.
Mas isso é graças a ele também.
Eu falei.
Eu, querendo ou não, toda vez que eu conversava com os pilotos, eu passava todas as nossas conversas, baseado no que era pertinente a eles. Então,
Yeah, as you told me that now, I'm thinking about something. Like several times that you were here and Neto was talking in the briefing, and he was talking about getting the cars better and it was, even though I didn't translate to you and you couldn't understand 100% what he was telling the drivers in the briefings and the drivers meetings. And it just came to me right now that a lot of these things that we're working together, especially him and Karen in the way that the drivers were supposed to like behave and the way the cars should look, and you bringing in the FD judging, and we're all working together. I've never realized that some things that were going on to get this result, I never translated to you. Maybe you felt it, I don't know. But like he said, oh yeah, we're always saying, because he always said in the driver's meeting after we did our technical stuff and I translated you, and lots of times he would talk about, guys, I'm bringing him in and you guys have to follow the rules, and there was always this reinforcement that I'm just saying personally, I don't remember translating to you, but I'm sure you kind of felt it, like it was going on. You can feel it, right? Even though it's in a different language. It's not a question, it's just me talking. Porque eu traduzo o que ele fala para...
Mas não se faz necessário, não se faz necessário fazer as perguntas. É mais tudo que a gente vem conversando, a gente passa a entender realmente o que ele precisa, as ferramentas que ele precisa para poder todos nós entregarmos juntos um grande espetáculo.
Mas
né?
É legal quando a gente traz isso à tona, né? Que nem ele falou que nem tinha muita expectativa porque em outros países não aconteceu.
Mas nós somos persistentes.
Persistentes e não só isso. É tipo, tesão na coisa mesmo, né?
É, sim.
Se não tiver tesão, não vai.
Ryan, obrigado. Obrigado por ter contado toda a sua história conosco, tirado todas as dúvidas do nosso público. Eu acho que isso é muito pertinente para nós que tentamos levar o máximo de informação de tanto os pilotos como todas as pessoas que são os integrantes da Super Drift Brasil. Obrigado mesmo. E agora nós temos um quadro nosso que se chama Na Porta. E hoje ele vai ser Na Porta com o Ryan. O que é esse Na Porta? Na Porta nada mais é do que algumas perguntas que nós vamos fazer para você, onde você vai responder rapidamente o que vem à sua cabeça. Não precisa ser respostas curtas, porém respostas que venham na hora na sua cabeça e que você queira achar por melhor falar conosco. Ryan, um lugar que, na sua opinião, todo mundo deveria conhecer.
Megaspace.
Muito rápido, filha da mãe.
Megaspace. Great.
Uau, Megaspace. Ele mandou diretamente no público do Drift agora. Liberdade para você ou melhor, qual o sinônimo de liberdade para você?
The ability to travel wherever you want.
Um sonho ainda não realizado.
Drive Neto's Rosa.
Dirigir o seu Veloso.
Bora, pode vir.
Yeah, the car's ready.
Tá pronto, fala pra ele.
It's ready. It has a new wheel setup and new tires. It's just waiting for you to drive.
Ryan daqui a 10 anos.
This, but with gray hair.
Filho da mãe.
Nice.
Ó, agora eu vou fazer uma pergunta. Vou fazer uma pergunta agora que muitos me perguntam, mas eu, depois dessa pandemia toda, realmente eu...
Fujo da resposta.
Não fujo da resposta, não. Eu gostaria de saber, de repente, Quando você vem pro Brasil? Agora eu te ferrei.
As soon as you guys will have me, I'm ready to go right away.
Estou pronto para ir agora. Assim que vocês puderem me receber, eu estou pronto para ir.
Pode vir, então.
You can come tomorrow.
O que te prende aí, então? Fala.
Well, I didn't know they were going to open the borders for everybody today. I thought it was Canada and Mexico, and then I read the rules, and it said all 33 countries that were barred from entering are now open. So I just figured it out today.
Ryan, muito obrigado. Mais uma vez, obrigado por trazer por esclarecer, né? Obrigado por esclarecer todas essas dúvidas conosco, com todo o nosso público. Gente, obrigado mais uma vez, espero que vocês tenham gostado. Ryan é uma pessoa muito querida dentro da família Super Drift Brasil, uma pessoa que eu já falei anteriormente, agregou muito e continua agregando, se tornou um grande amigo e uma pessoa que acredita no esporte. Então eu acho isso muito interessante, porque pessoas com uma visão igual a dele, que anda no mundo todo, e hoje está conosco e acreditando na evolução do esporte, isso para a gente é mais que uma honra. É algo que, para quem realmente acredita no esporte, como eu e toda a minha equipe, eu posso falar por todos eles de que para nós é algo muito satisfatório e muitas das vezes é isso que nos move a continuar fazendo o esporte no Brasil todo e tentando trazer o melhor que a gente consegue para vocês, tá? Muito obrigado por tudo e até a próxima. Lembrando de que esse podcast, para quem não entende o inglês, assim como eu, não tenho vergonha nenhuma em falar, são poucas as palavras que realmente eu domino. Fica mais fácil para vocês estarem assistindo ele dentro do YouTube, porque lá nós vamos colocá-lo todo legendado, então ficará mais fácil para todos. Obrigado Ryan, obrigado Fernando.
Obrigado você, obrigado por me ter aqui mais uma vez. Eu queria aproveitar também, agradecer o Ryan também, publicamente. 90% do que eu sei de drift foi o Ryan que me ensinou. Eu estou sempre junto com ele acompanhando, acompanho as provas da Fórmula Drift também, que é muito legal. Consigo falar com ele às vezes, né, eu já te falei isso, mas acho que a turma não sabe. Às vezes consigo até trocar uma ideia com ele no WhatsApp enquanto está tudo acontecendo, então é muito bacana. E enche o saco dele quando eu discordo, e a gente discute, e é assim mesmo que tem que ser. Então realmente eu queria agradecer vocês também pela oportunidade de ter me escalado como juiz naquela época, também em 2017, para trabalhar junto com o Ryan. Para mim é um privilégio, não só com vocês, estar com ele também.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I don't have the level of friendship or family I do with you guys with anybody else really in the world. It's a really special relationship that's formed over the years. And I appreciate the opportunity to come down there and for your trust and really your dedication to the sport, you know, and bringing me down there so much. I know it's not easy, it's not cheap, but I'm fortunate that you see the benefits in what I have to offer. And I'm also really, really proud and happy that you guys have made me a part of the family down there. So I am looking forward to coming back. It's definitely going to be in 2022 for sure. Now that we're able to do so, I'm really looking forward to it. It's been, you know, kind of an empty 2 years not being able to travel at all anywhere, but especially because I hadn't been able to go down and see, you know, the SCB family, all the fans, all the drivers. So I'm really looking forward to coming back, and hopefully we can get that planned sooner than later. And I look forward to coming down there, guys.
Perfect. Thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Valeu, galera.
Thank you very much.
Close.
Tamo junto.
Tamo junto.
Tamo junto.